There's a theory out there about why there's not that many exciting podcasts and shows that address European issues as a whole. Mainly, it's the fact that it's so many different countries that are part of Europe. Some are part of the European Union, other not. They don't share necessarily a language, and these people tend to consume different media. So it's kind of hard to get all these people on board and interested in the same thing. But then again, these days, pretty much everyone speaks English, so there must be another reason. And the theory goes that there's no like super exciting any side, left or right, show regarding Europe because Europe's just kind of boring. So there's no TYT Europe basically because all that the European Union does and all that really happens in the European Union and Europe, which is dominated by European Union politics, is like, these unaccountable bureaucrats who are in charge of all these different administrative affairs kind of arguing over the size of cheese and who gets to call what cheese Gouda and stuff like that, which is half true and half not true because there's actually a lot of drama happening behind the scenes and a lot of drama that happens between politicians and in their own countries between each other, and that's what's happened recently with the visit to Turkey made by European Union chiefs. This was Ursula von der Leyen and Shawn Michelle. Ursula von der Leyen is president of the European Commission. Shawn Michelle is president of the European Council. And they took a trip to Turkey. This is happening this week. It was big news. And there was so much drama to this story. It's incredible. And it's not for the reason that you think. When I started covering this, I thought it would be drama because of Turkey and what's going on in Turkey, but it's actually not that. Like, the drama is not about Turkey. The drama is about the cattiness inside the current relations in the European Union and between Ursula and Charles, it would seem. I mean, it's all speculation, allegedly. None of this is proven. I don't have a source in the European Commission yet, but I'm pretty sure there's like something weird going on. Anyway, this is what happened. Ursula von der Leyen, president of the European Commission, and Shawn Michelle, president of the European Council, went to Turkey on a visit this week because, well, why? Because Erdogan's been a naughty boy. Again, this is what he does. He's always a naughty boy, so no one was surprised. They've been talking about this visit for a while. There's a lot of stuff that they went to discuss, and I'll get into that in the second half of this story. But first I want to talk about what happened because it all got overshadowed by actual drama and hot tea that happened in Turkey on this visit between Turkey and the EU and Ursula von der Leyen and Shawn Michelle and Erdogan. And for a brief moment, Erdogan wasn't even a bad guy. Like, he wasn't the baddest. Well, I mean, it depends on your measurement of bad guy, but I'd say like for like a good 5 seconds or milliseconds, he was not the baddest guy in that room. Here's why. The European papers are calling it Sofagate. Sofagate. Chief European officials arrived in Turkey. They gave some speeches. Erdogan looked interested, but not too much. It was clear there was going to be one of those visits full of tension. And they had a meal. Then they went to negotiate and for a little sit down and a photo opportunity. And the Erdogan people had this chamber ready where these talks took place. And turned out that even though it was Ursula von der Leyen and Shawn Michelle together from the European Union, representing the European Union in these talks, Erdogan only had 2 seats available, and that was one for himself and one for the other person. And when they all 3 entered the room, Erdogan motioned Shawn Michelle into the other main seat and kind of left Ursula just kind of standing, wondering, hanging. It's iconic. The footage is amazing. You should watch it just for like, if you're not even interested in European politics that much, you just watch it for the feminism. It's incredible. if this keeps happening, the show is going to be really interesting. But yeah, it was like this, like a momentous, like, oh my god, the tension. And she was just kind of standing there, and then she like sat on the sofa with like, and there's like another administrative person, I think, on the other like side of the room, on the other divan or sofa, whatever you want to call it. And like the look on her face. And Shawn Michelle, the worst thing about the situation is that like clearly there was manipulation from Erdogan's side. Like, Erdogan is the kind of guy that, like, they're literally, Ursula von der Leyen and Shawn Michelle were in Turkey because Erdogan is breaking all the treaties, all the commitments he's made to human rights and specifically to women's rights. So they're there specifically to discuss the women's issues, right? And he didn't have a seat for the woman. On purpose. And he, on purpose, like, made it clear, like, he made sure that Shawn Michelle sat down. And Shawn Michelle, instead of showing, like, the tiniest bit of backbone or, you know, any kind of, like, you know, thinking apparatus, like, even in the lowest life forms, he like, didn't. He sat down and, like, his face, like, the expression is blank, like, you know, only an amoeba or any invertebrate, like, it's an invertebrate face. Like, this is someone who is so spineless that their expression has now turned into a primitive organism. It was horrific to behold. And what a horrible situation, and what a horrible way to treat. And this is supposed to be, you know, people in the top ranks of the European Union who are representing European citizens, allowing someone like Erdogan to treat a woman in this way, clearly on purpose, clearly making a statement. And Shawn Michelle, instead of diplomatically turning the situation around, just sat there like a total loser. Ursula, of course, didn't do anything. They didn't do anything. They didn't want to cause a scene, so it just, like, it happened. The meeting happened. She was, like, on the other side of the room. It was really uncomfortable, and then it stopped. And then, of course, the day after, Twitter was ablaze with criticism of Shawn Michelle, not Erdogan, because we know that Erdogan does this stuff, and he was very successful in doing it because he caused quite a stir, and Shawn Michelle kind of fell into his trap. Yeah, like pretty much every newspaper, every publication, Twitter, everyone and their dog walker's mother is like on this now because, and there's like a lot of criticism of Shawn Michelle. So he's getting the brunt of it, and he actually made a statement, and then he issued an apology about this, which was not a very good apology. He basically said that he was sorry, not sorry. There was nothing he could have done. He basically said, there's nothing else I could do. It was like, that's what happened. I didn't want to do anything because I didn't want to cause an incident. Because, you know, that's kind of the style of, like, most European Union diplomacy is to kind of, like, you know, be, like, low-key, don't cause an incident, don't do anything. But, I mean, this is, like, two people, you know? Like, they came in there as a team, and he got completely played. This isn't even about, like, not causing an incident. This is about, like, showing some vestige of power and self-respect that he totally failed on. Totally failed. So that's what he said. He was like, I didn't want to cause an incident. And then he was like, well, I didn't know what else to do. And then finally he said in his, like, statement, not an apology, he said, well, you know what? Like, I just thought that, like, I didn't really think it would be too much of a deal for Ursula because Ursula is a feminist, and the way that I understand equal rights, I don't know if he used the word feminist, but he definitely said, like, women's equal rights. And he was like, the way that I interpret equality is that it shouldn't matter if the man or the woman sits or who goes in first. This is gold. This is so bad, by the way. I am appalled by this. I think Shawn Michelle has clearly, like, whatever idea they have in the European, like, whatever his advisors in the European Union think that his brand should be, and, like, how important it is for, like, people to actually think you're popular, like, he just lost his, like, he only started, like, a year ago. He's lost. Like, he's done. Like, this is incredibly bad. This is such bad press. European officials never get this kind of bad press. Juncker who was the predecessor for Ursula von der Leyen, by the end of like his stint in the commission was like saying creepy things to interns and like appearing drunk and stuff, and like nobody really cared because it was like so low key and kind of boring. But like this is the stuff that Twitter is made of. So in a weird way, I'm hoping this is gonna like shine a little bit of more light on like the workings of the European Union and get more people involved, like as citizens in Europe, in the governance of Europe, and in a possible federal future, because I think that's where we should be going. And right now, this idiot is functioning in his diplomatic role, unaccountable to anyone, because that's how the European Union works currently. The citizens of Europe don't choose him. Nobody votes for him. He's elected by other officials. And it's a kind of, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of people kind of fear and don't understand the European Union, and why things like Brexit happened out of ignorance, and also a failure by the European Union to appeal to its citizens, which is like kind of like your first concern really as a governing body, but they fail. And yeah, so Shawn Michelle, like it turns out Shawn Michelle is a total amoeba. The president of the European Council is a total, like completely unable to stand up to anybody. And he also seems to have an incel interpretation. Like he's basically an incel. He's outed himself as an incel, because only an incel would say, well, my interpretation of feminism is that if you punch me in the face, then I can punch you in the face too. Right? Like, oh, you want equal rights? Well, you pay for my dinner. Well, you want equal rights? Well, you carry this stuff. Because, like, whatever. Equal rights, Shawn Michelle, just a quick lesson on equal rights and what women actually usually want. Usually, this is what feminism and equal rights is about. It's not about giving you, the cis male of privilege, the right to trample over a woman, take first place just by sheer speed or strength, or by the fact that there's another male of privilege with you, motioning you into the seat of privilege, and then say, oh, but it's equal rights, so you could have been quicker. Why weren't you quicker? You don't mind. Oh, you don't mind that you don't mind that I ate your cake and then had it too, because it's equal rights. I was just stronger than you. Equal rights is not some bizarre interpretation and misinterpretation of Darwinian psychology and the pseudoscience that it is. It's equal rights, and it's also being polite. When Donald Tusk, when he was president of the European Council, he had a really good partnership with Jean-Claude Juncker, who was president of the Commission, like Ursula von der Leyen is now. And if that had happened to them, would they have done this? Like, it doesn't even matter that she was a woman. What matters is that you're showing extreme lack of any kind of resolve or self-respect as a representative of Europe and the European Union when you go to see someone like Erdogan, who is a wannabe dictator. If it happened to Donald Tusk and Juncker, when they're both men, they're both white men of privilege, they would have made a bit of a fuss. I'm sure they would have like done something. It's not just because she's a woman. It's just because you're a spineless amoeba. Shawn Michelle. That's what happened. Incredible. Anyway, so the president of the European Council was outed as an incel. And then there's more, but there's more to this drama. There's like another layer. So then it turns out, this has been going on for like 3 solid days. Sofagate is what I look for. So then it turned out that there's speculation that Erdogan kind of used the opportunity of interpreting protocol in a very strict way to make this situation happen, and that the reason why he was able to make the situation so uncomfortable for the EU officials is because there was a lot of miscommunication and power play between the entourage of Ursula von der Leyen and Shawn Michelle separately. And they in turn had issues with the EU people, the EU delegation on the ground already. So there were like 3 different parties working, and then communicating with Erdogan and his people on how to organize this thing, and some of these things were missed. Erdogan didn't make any kind of a secret that he was going to have 2 chairs. So there's a lot of speculation at the moment, including in Politico, about what kinds of tensions might be going on there and why this happened in the first place. And one of the excuses, well, definitely a statement made by Erdogan's staff, I think, or at least the information that they've given out, was that the Erdogan people simply interpreted protocol extremely strictly, like, obviously on purpose, but, like, in a way they were right to do this because the president of the European Council is slightly more senior than the president of the European Commission, and therefore it's like the equivalent of a visit by a president and a first or prime minister. So, like, you know, in a parliamentary system. Nevertheless, it's good to remember, though, that that's not really true, because that's not, like, strictly how this works in the European Union. It is different. That's why they're both called president. So maybe there needs to be a different interpretation of protocol, or, like, a better approach to communication in future, so things like this don't happen, especially when then it comes out, like, when it causes this kind of an incident, because this like is a big incident, and people are calling it a gaffe. It's not a gaffe. It's an incident, because it just, like, shows the leaders of the European Union to be idiots, and also sexist idiots, who will, at the drop of a hat, just follow a sexist dictator to whatever destination he wants to lead them to. But anyway, so that's also, there were statements also by European Union, I think, statements by European Union officials, or, you know, people close to the situation, confirming that, you know, actually, Shawn Michelle is the more senior, so if there's 2 chairs, he should take the first chair, whatever. But I think there's tension between them. They should be having a meeting right now. They should be, they have these, like, regular meetings, Ursula and Charles, but they skipped one. So I think there's definite drama, 100% drama. Incredible. It reminds me of that time, maybe some of you remember, when Angela Merkel went to see Putin a few years back, and Putin Angela Merkel is scared of dogs. She has a phobia of dogs, and Putin, the big macho Putin, went to meet her, to greet her with a bunch of massive dogs at his side, like Alsatian style dogs. And yeah, interesting. It's like the same tactic, you know, these, like, little wannabe dictators with their tiny wee-wees, trying to prove a point. And obviously, it was bad enough that Putin did this. Like Ursula, Angela ignored it, got on with the situation. That's what European Union officials do. That's their style. What doesn't help is having a man at your side as a woman who then undermines you and makes everything harder for you. And it inadvertently makes the situation look like he sided with the guy who was out to get you. Incredible. Anyway, but it does show how much they're scared of us, women, and how little they have to offer in terms of attack. This is the best he could do. Like, this, a mean girl situation. You can't sit with us. Like, that is what Erdogan has. Okay, but why were these people in Turkey in the first place? Well, let me tell you, there's been a lot of drama always. Turkey's been full of drama. Erdogan is a very, very bad man and a very naughty boy, and he's always doing naughty things, and the European Union's always like, don't be a naughty boy, and then he does it anyway, and then they kiss and make up, and it's like this whole thing. There's a reason why Turkey is not a part of the European Union. It's Erdogan. It's Erdogan. Turkey should have become a member of the European Union, like, back in the 2000s by rights. But it never did because of its issues internally with human rights, with the way that things are run, and with the kinds of commitments it's able to do in terms of the European Union and the way that it sees, again, human rights issues, basically. Erdogan recently announced, this was in late March, that he has decided that he will be leaving the Istanbul Convention, ironically enough, yep, which was signed in Istanbul in 2001, and he's not interested in being part of it anymore. He's bored with it. He's done, because this convention was signed by mainly European but also world countries, including Turkey, including the United States, including Canada. It's a commitment from each of those countries and states to uphold the necessity for protecting women's rights and looking at the issue of women's rights, domestic violence, and violence against women and children as issues that really do pertain fundamentally to human rights. Because very often there's just not enough legislation and not enough protection for women who are victims of violence, when that violence is mainly because they're women, but we don't see it as human rights violations, and there's just not enough legislation around the world. This is a global issue. And that's what that convention was for. Not all the countries ratified it. Turkey was one of the countries that did actually ratify it, as far as I know. And yeah, and now 10 years later, this was signed in 2011. 10 years later, he's like, no, you know what? I don't want it anymore, because I've decided that things like this go against traditional values. And Turkey is all about traditional values, so we're going to quit. And he made this announcement, and there was a big, big backlash in Turkish society. And the women are pissed, obviously, and feminists are pissed. Everyone's pissed, because that's not how it should be, and he shouldn't be making this decision by himself. But as we know, Erdogan is a wannabe dictator. There is not that much freedom of speech in Turkey right now, so we don't really know the scale and the extent of the outrage, because we just can't read about it, because a lot of journalism is controlled by Erdogan. So that's happened. So that was a no-no. And another thing that he's been kind of doing recently, which is kind of, it's at the same time pathetic and even funny, but on the other hand, it's chillingly dangerous. Erdogan has a lot of freedom of speech infractions in his little record book of things he's done that made people uneasy. But his latest one is what is colloquially known as the Internet Law. The Internet Law in Turkey is coming into force as we speak, and it's something he's been working on for the past year or two. What happened is that someone tweeted a joke about his son or his daughter in Turkey on Twitter, and he didn't like it. He didn't think it was funny, and he decided that there has to be a law against this kind of thing, against all this free speech and making jokes about his children. So he decided that from now on in Turkey, if you are a social media platform with over 1 million users, you have to have a representative who will by law liaise and be required to speak to and report to the Turkish government, i.e. Erdogan, and ensure that the laws of the country are in place, including this internet law, which means if there's something they don't like, if there's something they don't want to see on the internet, they're going to tell you, like Facebook, Twitter, whoever, take down this thing, take down this account, these are not the keywords we're doing in Turkey anymore, things like that. Facebook already said yes, of course. Twitter kind of held out for a long time. If there's anything good about Twitter, it is that they tend to hold out on things like this. They tend to be a little bit more unapologetic in their own creepy, postmodern, apocalyptic, technical way. But just last week, they kind of gave in, and they're now sending someone out. They're going to appoint someone. It's going to happen. Every one of these media giants, Facebook, Twitter, they're all going to have an appointed person who's going to liaise with the Turkish government and make sure that nothing naughty is said that Erdogan might not like. Obviously, there's many issues with this. I think my biggest one, though, is that it's so easy for someone like Erdogan to hold these sources of communication that we have today that have become dominant in our culture, like globally. We are all dependent on things like Twitter to exist, to get our information. It's a monopoly, and we can't get out of that. Like it's dominating the market. There's no alternative to that. Not realistically. You could try like a less known platform, but it's not an alternative, because you're not going to be part of the global conversation if you don't participate in this. And the people who are in charge of these global means of communication that inform and shape what is being said are single-handedly negotiating with someone like Erdogan. Like, this is who's in charge of us now, globally, as global citizens. These people are in charge of you and me, to the extent that Facebook is talking to someone like Erdogan, old school dictator Erdogan, old school authoritarian, and new school authoritarian and dictator Zuckerberg. And they're having nice conversations. They seem to be able to work together pretty well. And I understand, I don't want to be like unfair and too harsh. I understand that, you know, there's people in Twitter, people who are part of Facebook. They understand themselves that they're doing this so that they can continue to provide the service to people in Turkey. They don't want to deprive them of this means of communication, so they have to make some concessions, even though it does hurt in the long term, directly or indirectly, and silence the citizens of Turkey. That it's some kind of a compromise, that there's a greater good being served here. But at the same time, I think my argument is it shouldn't be up to them anyway. It shouldn't be up to Zuckerberg. And if something is so big and so predominant in global culture, this is not like a fad. This is not like one, you know, things like Facebook, like he rules the world, and he's so powerful, and the platform is so powerful that it's able to negotiate completely outside of any other protocol or political body or force or political regulation. He's able to just single-handedly negotiate with someone like Erdogan, and I'm very uneasy about that. I think that is a glimpse into our future, and that should not be our future. We need to. I mean, Erdogan is Erdogan. He's going to do stuff like that. That's what he does, right? But, you know, people like Facebook need to, when stuff like this happens, they need to... It's not even when stuff like this happens. No. They just need to step back in general. And governments globally need to find ways of speaking about these types of monopolies in a way that's going to help us to dismantle them. If one man is in charge of the way that communication is engaged in and made and created in the entire world between people on a political scale, that's the death of thinking. That's the death of our future intellectual progeny, like, you know, and also the death of freedom. It really shouldn't be, these guys shouldn't be so powerful, basically. I don't know what the solution is in terms of like practically step by step how to tackle this. And definitely the situation with the Amazon vote and the way that was manipulated, and how these workers were intimidated, basically. That is painting a really scary picture of the future. And I believe that there is strength in numbers. I believe there is strength in communication, and there is strength in protests, and there's strength in unions around the world. Literally proletarians of the world uniting. And we have to do something about this, because these people these people are deciding our fate. And I've also heard people say, oh, actually, I read an article recently where someone was saying, well, this thing with Erdogan, doesn't that show you that, like, a regulation of corporations is bad? It's always bad. No, like, it shows me that regulation of corporations like Facebook is really necessary, because if you don't do that, then they become people like Erdogan. And then old school meets new school and, like, turns into some other new type of dictatorship that I dread to think about. But there's, like, some people saying, like, oh, like, if you want to regulate Facebook, like, you're basically Erdogan. Like, this ridiculous binary argument that's, like, people are always making these arguments in favor of these horrific, ginormous corporations. And it's not like, you know, it's not like conservative opinion makers or even right of center or center opinion makers are, like, that invested in these corporations. It always makes me wonder why so many people want to go against their own best interests and side with the very thing that's oppressing them. I don't know.